Welcome back to another episode of Burn the Talking Points. I am Joe Francavilla, your Deputy Executive Director here at the Maryland Democratic Party, and our episode today is really, really interesting. We gathered some young Democrats here in Maryland, and just so everyone knows what page we're on, these are folks who are involved in the party and want to see the Democratic Party do better, to have a conversation about what's keeping them up at night, what do they want to see as the issues that are front and center going forward. But stick around because we get into some of the meat of what the main conversations we're having here in the state and the nation are. Like, let's talk about David Hogg. Let's talk about primarying ineffective incumbents. Let's talk about money in politics. We talk about their social media, their group chats. Where do they get information? And it's a really informative and interesting conversation. And it's part of a bigger series that we're going to start where we talk to different members of our coalition, whether it be young voters, disengaged voters, folks that should vote for the Democratic Party but don't, maybe people who have voted third party. We're going to be having these conversations over the next year or so, and we're starting it today with young Dems. We have Jared, Autumn, and Samay with us. They're going to introduce themselves in just a second, but I would be remiss if I did not talk about the state of the nation right now and the world. A lot has changed since the last time we chatted. One, we have a new pope, which is cool because he's from the Midwest, and he taught at a school that's like 20 minutes from my parents live. So RIP Pope Francis, welcome Pope Leo the 14th. We also have just blatant open corruption in Washington, D.C. They're not even trying to hide it anymore. Donald Trump accepted a $400 million plane from the Qatari government, which is a foreign intelligence coup for any nation to do. But he doesn't care because it's corrupt and it's also bad for our national security. And we also have a defense secretary that's just asleep at the wheel. F-35s keep falling into the ocean off of aircraft carriers. We're losing battles to the Houthis, like just real amateur stuff. So we're going to get deep into a lot of these conversations. And obviously, we're going to talk about the Republican budget that just came out that guts Medicaid over the next couple of weeks. But today, it's all about young Democrats. What do they want to see from the party and how we win against? So really stick around because it's a really, really interesting conversation that gets into some of the meat of everything that I think we need to talk about as Democrats. So without further ado, I want our guests, Samay, Autumn, and Jared, to do a quick introduction of themselves.
Thanks, Joe. So as Joe said, I'm Samay Kindra. Currently, I'm the Manager of Government Affairs for Vicinity Energy, which is like some really cool stuff that maybe I'll talk about in decarbonization in Baltimore City and our energy supply there. But outside of that, I'm a lawyer by trade. I've been in Democratic politics since high school. Started off as an intern in then Senator Ben Cardin's office. Ran for the Board of Education in Baltimore County. Came up a percent short, but we moved past that. And just sort of been around for a while. I was on the Central Committee in Baltimore County, a couple other councils, advisory roles, campaigns. Just sort of been around, proud Democrat, and excited to have this conversation here today.
And if you're willing, are you willing to share your age?
I will be 27 in a month or so.
Fantastic. Jared Matthews.
My name is Jared Matthews. I am initially from Southwest Michigan, so glad to see we have a Midwest Pope. I've been working on campaigns since 2016, knocked my first door for Bernie's presidential race in his primary. But since then, I've worked for the DCCC. I've worked on campaigns in Texas, Arizona, Michigan. And then Joe brought me to Maryland to work on Brooke Learman's comptroller race. And I've worked since then for Delegate Elizabeth Embry, Congressman Steny Hoyer. I ran his political operation both in state and nationally, his AmeriPAC, his leadership PAC. And then I ended up as the organizing director for the state party here in Maryland. We won the Senate race. We beat a 2-term Republican governor and held all 3 open House seats. So very proud of the work we did there and built the biggest coordinator the state's ever seen. So
awesome. And age?
When I'm 30 years old, I might be, I think, maybe the second oldest. How old? We'll see.
Autumn.
Hello. I am Autumn Grant, Baltimore born and raised. I got my start in politics just by being involved in the community, being involved in my church. I interned in Baltimore County politics, got involved with some early races then. I went on to college, and when I was getting my master's, I was like, I want to do a little bit more. And so being in American University in D.C., always loving to experiences at the Capitol. I interned at the U.S. Senate. I also interned with a finance consulting firm on the Hill, really valuable experience. I then went on to work at the Department of Justice for a little while, and then I went on to work in the Maryland Senate. I was a page there, and then I served as the chief of staff. And then I did some campaign work in Baltimore City, notably in District 46, and then went on to work on the coordinated campaign as our community organizing manager. So really proud of that work that we did on that race. And now I am getting into political consulting a little bit more and looking forward to expanding. I'm also currently a member of our Baltimore City Central Committee. So really loving it. I love the journey so far as well.
Awesome. Thanks, all through. Oh, and age.
Yes, I'm 27.
Just real quick, also excited to see former page here. So
Your former page too?
that was a former page back in the day. Those terrible gray jackets that they made us wear.
Awesome.
We should have gotten those for today.
You guys get to keep.
No, we don't. I would not want to keep that jacket.
And you have to give them back. Interesting. Got it. Learn something new every day. I thought you got to keep those, but I guess not. So you see, we have a variety of ages here, experiences, but the one thing I think is uniting, one is a desire to see the Democratic Party win again, but also as young Dems, a feeling that like things are maybe not working for you all how you want it to. So let's just start at the national level. Like, what's keeping you up at night? What's giving you anxiety? What is it that is on your mind first? And whoever wants to start can just jump in.
I'll jump in. So one of the things for me is that my parents and family, I think, have a very different view of the world and what it means to get older than my generation does. Being 27, I consider myself a millennial, definitely technically in Gen Z, but I had more of the, playing outside. I had real photo albums, played with, colored pencils and things like that. Remember having a CD player. So, I think my parents, they're coming of ages in the 80s, right? And so they're thinking, oh yeah, grow up, buy a house, have kids, all these regular staple things of the American lifestyle. And my siblings and I are approaching our 30s, and our parents are like, oh, you're still doing the roommate living style situation, or having a professional job, but then maybe working a side gig for extra money, that kind of thing. And they're, not just really understanding that there's just a difference in the way our generation's going to progress and go forward. And I think that that's something that's troubling for a lot of people in our age group, looking to see, okay, how do I find my footing and stability in this, new economy? Even if I have a solid education, career, what really, can I do next to make sure that I'm on the path to stability? So I think that's one of the things that a lot of people are looking toward now.
I think for me, and I think, part of this, I mentioned I'm a lawyer by trade and went to Maryland, double Terp grad, Maryland undergrad, Maryland Law School. So, when I look at sort of our lowercase d democratic institutions, I talk about the framework of our democracy, of our republic, what keeps me up at night is seeing the possibility of those degrading. I do think, I'm a firm believer in this too shall pass. We're in a tough time right now, but I have full faith in our party and our country to move past this. But in order for that path forward to be successful, we have to make sure that we haven't gone into complete disrepair. Yeah. And so I think that keeps me up at night, is looking at what's happening in D.C. and sort of seeing institutions being questioned, being dismantled. And, I believe that's really what our focus needs to be right now, is we're going to get past this, but we have to make sure something to get back to.
Yeah. I have a lot of questions on what it looks like when we get past it. And
exactly.
It's something that I just don't understand how Republican presidents in the future, J.D. Vance, Lauren Boebert, Marjorie Taylor Greene, whoever it is, doesn't just look at Donald Trump, what he did and got away with, and say, why wouldn't I do that too? Yeah. Democrats are too good of governors and things to say, I'm going to, when their head's down, I'm going to step on it and use the same power, even if it's corrupt. I'm not advocating we be corrupt, but what's going to stop Republicans in the future from being corrupt? Nothing.
Yep. And, again, the legal perspective, or, a lot of the constitutional law cases I studied, not too long ago, I graduated in 2023. So not too long ago, all of a sudden, I can only imagine are being taught a little bit differently now, and the things that, we've been taught as lawyers and as legal scholars to think of and look at, and ways the courts typically read decisions or make decisions, all that sort of in question. And so I think that is what keeps me up, is so that existential thought of, what are we going to come back to?
And so I'm hearing so from Autumn, I'm hearing just sounds like a little bit of cost of living, buying a house. Can one job sustain it? if I want to have kids, can I afford them? And then from Samay, I'm hearing like the existential dread of what we're seeing on TV and like, is this going to completely upend how we operate and live? Jared, tie break us.
And this may be a little bit selfish, but and some may touch on it too, is the distrust in federal institutions and our nation's institutions. If my girlfriend, she works for HHS, the federal level, and unfortunately RFK Jr. is her boss, but like she went from being mostly remote to having to commute to the office every single day from Baltimore City to Rockville, and like having over the weekend half of her team just fired, and then some of them rehired back. And it's frustrating to see a lot of our fellow Americans have distrust in government, just because I don't think they'd fully realize like what the federal government actually does for everyday Americans across the country, whether it be rural, urban, suburban municipalities. But she's been obviously personally impacted by that. But this kind of what got me involved in politics was like the level of monopolization we see in our private sector. It's had something to do with the monumental inflation we're seeing in the last few years post-COVID.
I am fully behind the corporate price gouging is a massive part of it. I know there's economic blah, 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 but you cannot tell me you look at all of these corporate reports and corporate earnings calls and then bragging about record profits and not say that it's not part of inflation.
And like the stock market's not reflective of the American economy. Like numbers may go up on the NASDAQ, but it's everyday Americans are still hurting.
So let's flip gears and I'm going to use a phrase you use, Samay, this too shall pass. So ideally it passes and Democrats are in power, but we need a path to that power.
Yeah.
What's the one policy area you want to see the Democratic Party champion as like, I don't need all the solutions. You don't need to tell me like sliding scale, blah, blah, blah. Tell me like, what is it front and center that you think, put it there, this is the path to victory?
So I actually don't think it's any one particular issue. I think, and I encourage everyone to go back and look at Obama explain this, because far more eloquent than I will ever be. He gave this warning in 2019. It's the idea of a Democratic purity test. I think as a party, we've sort of slipped into this notion that in order to be a Democrat, in order to be a good Democrat, you have to agree on 100% of the issues, 100% of the way, and order those issues in the same order of importance as everyone else. And if you don't, sorry, you're not a Democrat, you're not good enough. And I think that's posed a lot of challenges for us. I think it's turned us into a party where people sometimes don't feel welcome. They feel like if maybe there's one issue out of the 100 that they don't fully agree with Democrats on, or whatever they perceive the Democrat to be, that they're not welcome and they can't vote for them. And someone recently on Bill Maher, I think it was David from the DNC.
We're going to talk David Hogg.
Yeah, David Hogg.
I promise you we're going to talk David Hogg.
This is not about that, but he mentioned something that's sort of akin to that, which is when I was growing up, and like Republicans were that party of the judgmental, snobby folk. Like if you didn't agree with them on every single issue the way they did, you weren't a true Republican. You couldn't be a Republican. You get judged, and that's what he sort of mentioned on Bill Maher. Was it seems like sometimes how Democrats have taken on that role, that if you don't agree with us on this issue to the exact degree and way that we do, sorry, you're not good enough. And I think that gets away from us having really important discussion about everyday issues with people because they don't feel like they can engage with us. I think it gets us away from building a strong coalition of people who maybe agree on 99% of the issues. And it gets us away from having discussion about solutions to issues because we're not willing to discuss that 5% we disagree on. And I'm someone who really does believe that if you put two people in a room who agree 95% of the way and have them discuss that 5% that they don't, that's where you can come up with some really unique solutions that neither of them walked into that room with.
Yeah. I mean, I'm on if you 51% of the way, come on over. We love you over here. Autumn, Jared, what's the tentpole issue you want to see Democrats talk about more, champion, put on path to victory?
Ooh. I was at, unfortunately, like a DC happy hour maybe 2 months ago.
They're terrible to be at.
I know, they're miserable.
As a Baltimore native, I hate
I know.
Yeah.
And I was at a table with like a Republican digital strategist, And she was like, I think that Democrats, they want to win, need to move further left economically and like maybe lay off some of the social issues. But I don't agree with entirely, but I do think that there's a huge distrust in it's the political system we have right now. Like I saw recently polls, like right now, Democrats, they have like a 39% approval rating. The party itself, and Republicans the Republican Party has a higher approval rate, which is crazy to see. This is like in the heat of the tariff fiasco we're in to say right now. Like there's a huge distrust with everyday Americans with the Democratic Party. I do think it has something to do with how we're fighting the current economic system. So I do think we need to move left some way. It kind of proves we're taking on corporate greed, or taking on corporate power, and fighting for their everyday Americans. So,
Autumn,
yeah, I would say, and I don't even think it's actually just one of those things that's an issue standalone on its own, but maybe understanding and how we talk about misinformation, I think, is very important. I think, it kind of goes to your point that people are immediately thrown in a box if you believe or pick up on something, right? Because something may have gone out and gone viral that was heavily edited, right? Or was digitally altered and may misrepresent a very significant event, or just be misleading people altogether. And people are very quick to slap you're unintelligent, you're illiterate, you're all these negative labels on the people who may have just been misled by misinformation, but also holding people accountable for getting back to wholesome and really, cured media, things that are have been fully researched, getting into media literacy and what that really looks like, and helping maybe more average people to understand that. I know as someone that is, considered educated and knows and all these things, it's easy to say, oh yeah, how could you have, been fooled by that? Or you didn't, grow up learning about XYZ. That's a repeated history. But really embracing people and kind of figuring out what we can do to work through that. Yeah.
All right, those are all interesting. Jared.
Autumn mentioned misinformation.
So thanks for raising your hand.
And like Democrats were much better this cycle at kind of really the first presidential cycle where they've kind of made a step forward in their digital footprint. Like Republicans have been doing this for I don't know how long. At this point, 10 years probably. And like the Republicans and conservatives and the alt-right absolutely own like alternative media, and when it comes to like podcasts, and kind of like social video.
Not after this podcast.
Yeah, I mean this is right after this. Yeah, this is number one in the country.
Like, and unfortunately, the younger generation, like the Zoomers and the Gen A's, and I think Generation Beta. I don't think they had folks born this year. I think this year's the first year. Which is crazy. But like they're spending a lot more time on the internet. They're not necessarily going outside as much, and so like we need to figure out a way to somehow reach them.
Yeah.
And like I'm not trying to hate on the the liberal influencers that are out there, the Democratic influencers, but they're kind of cringe.
I mean, some of them are.
And like I mean, I don't necessarily agree with Hassan Piker 100%, but I mean that dude is getting 30 to 40,000 viewers on Twitch every single day.
Yeah. I think that's the point we're trying to figure out as a party is like, where do we have conversations? And I think you've seen both Chair Martin and others say like, talk to everyone everywhere all the time. And I think you are seeing more.
Yeah.
I think you're also seeing some of the 2028 hopefuls start to do some dress rehearsals on different shows.
Mayor Pete on like this alpha male podcast, which is crazy to see.
I mean, you're seeing people everywhere, which is really good to see. Yeah. So what you guys said to my initial question was interesting. You guys took it way deeper than I was hoping, which is great. I love a deep conversation. I meant more like, hey, childcare costs. That's what I would put front and center. I don't know. Do you guys have a specific issue where you're like, burn it down, Democratic Party, fix this, and this will fix it? I mean, I know out there is like banning members of Congress from trading stock, which great idea. My personal pet project right now is childcare costs because I have a daughter that it is so expensive to afford childcare. She goes to a great place, don't get me wrong, but it's like, it's not the top of the line place where, It's so expensive. It's like more than my mortgage. Crazy. What do you guys have an issue where like, I'm going to lead the parade here?
There's so many. Name them.
Name the ones that are on your mind.
I guess to boil down, where my point was coming from is really that educational aspect. I think we've seen that education has been a talking point and kind of under attack.
Yeah.
And so looking at education equity, what that looks like, funding in education, and then all of
the cost of education.
Yeah.
It's something's got to break in the next decade. It is completely unattainable right now for most people. It's crazy.
And then all of the socioeconomic aspects that go into educating the general population, making sure the people are fed, that schools are safe to be in, that the school environment is one that is open to a lot of different types of learning. I think those are all important. And I know that's a really complex.
Also, just name 10. Give me the one. What is your number one? Education.
Education.
All right.
Funding and education.
Funding education.
Yeah.
Jared, give me your one. Just what's on your heart?
Addressing the climate crisis.
Sameh?
I would say climate crisis are the reason I took this job that I'm in right now. I think that's, I know it's hard to pick one issue. I'm thinking, like, what's the most existential? I think, climate crisis, education, ran for Board of Education, and part of it was exactly what you're saying is, like, if we're not educating the next generation properly, we're setting them up for failure. And when you see what's happening at, just the Department of Education, don't know whose idea that was. I don't know if they went to school, but I think really it's sort of the issues that are most important to me are those that I see as the most existential, that have the most reach. And I think one is obviously the climate. We have to have a planet to live on. And two is education. I mean, we have to have an educated populace.
Yeah, those are fair. I'm going to take host privileges and I'm going to add guns to my list there. Like,
okay.
I think we're at an existential point with gun violence, and I don't know. I mean, I have my own ideas what to do. Probably if I said them out loud, I would never ever be welcomed in any Democratic politics ever, or Republican politics, or maybe or libertarian politics. But that's the one I'm probably the most radical on is guns.
Yeah. I'll throw a hot one out there.
Yeah.
I do think we need some sort of term limits.
Term limits. Yeah.
In Congress. I mean, I think all these issues that we talked about in some way touch upon young people or the next generation. And I'm all for institutional knowledge. There's 100% a need, whether it be you can get back to, cutting bureaucracy and getting rid of folks' institutional knowledge there, or in elected offices, we need institutional knowledge. We have to have people who can carry the torch and pass it on. But you have to look and see, there does come a time where you have to have new perspective.
Yeah.
You have to have new people with new ideas in there.
It's actually a great transition to what I want to talk about next. I want to talk about David Hogg. So for the audience, if you don't know, David Hogg is one of the vice chairs of the DNC. So he has an actual official role at the Democratic National Committee. He recently announced that his PAC that he runs, I think it's called Leaders We Deserve, is going to raise $20 million and primary Democrats in safe blue seats that he calls ineffective. Now, there's no criteria for what ineffective means. He's also said things like, that doesn't mean Nancy Pelosi, but it means different folks who just aren't meeting the moment. There has been a massive divide in the Democratic Party. There's been a big generational divide, and I want to talk to you on where you sit on this. Is David Hogg's idea a good idea? I'm going to leave it at that. We can talk about the merits of whether he should do it as a sitting DNC member or not. I have very strong feelings on that. But is his idea, raise $20 million and primary what he considers ineffective Democrats in blue seats, a good idea?
Terrible idea.
Terrible
idea. And I do think sort of what you got to the young, I think there's this notion that young people are all for this all the time. I go back to what I said to lead this discussion off of what is our existential crisis as a nation right now. And it is protecting the very framework of our republic, of our lowercase d democratic institutions. That has to be what we are focused on. And in order to save those and protect them, that means getting a foothold in some branch of government. And the way to do that most fastest is in Congress, right?
Yep.
Is the House of Representatives. That election is coming up. in order to gain our foothold there and save our democratic institutions, we have to flip some seats. That means, by logic, that the number one thing we have to do, we have to focus on is flipping seats in the House of Representatives, which means every single resource that we have available, every ounce of media capital, social capital, political capital, dollars, man hours, whatever you have, has to go towards flipping those seats. And so anything that we do otherwise is not addressing the most existential issues that we face.
So let's say it's 2028, we flip the House in 26, and he wants to do this in 28.
Yeah,
then you're like, go for it.
There has to be more discussion about it. I think hopefully it's something we talk about the lack of nuance that we have sometimes, is especially younger folk, when we get caught up in social media hashtags and things. Like, there has to be nuance about that, about how we're doing that, what we're doing. But in terms of right now, it is not the time or place to say we're going to start challenging Democrats who are safe. It is simple math. We have to flip the House of Representatives. We have to flip an objective number of seats. In order to do that, you have to put every dollar and resource you can.
So I got Sameh on no. Jared?
Oh, I'm all for it. I think I mentioned this earlier, but there's a young people distrust the Democratic Party at an increasingly higher clip every single cycle. And that has to do with, them feeling that they aren't being fought for in D.C. So I think I think primaries are good. We live in a democracy. I think primaries help build better candidates, help form them in, kind of like trial by fire. Because a lot of these folks have been in office for a long time, and they just want to, or they just, haven't had a competitive race in a minute. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. And if they're, they can have a strong track record, they have a good record to go on, they'll be perfectly fine. However, like we can get into like whether or not David Hogg should be doing it, or if it should be someone else. But
yeah, I'm gonna I'm somewhere in the middle with it. I do like the idea of having younger people and people that represent more maybe current views in office, especially at the national level, because there are so many things changing. But I definitely understand the urgency of the moment that, we have to do to protect just the basics of what the nation is intentionally supposed to stand for. I think that being someone that's interned in these spaces and worked in these spaces, that the young people do run the hill, though. That staffers, all staffs are generally staffed with younger people, bringing the ideas, getting on the groundwork. Now, does that necessarily translate to what happens on the outside is the question. But there are a lot of young people that are on and around the hill, but it's looking at who's really holding the seats, I think, is also a really important part of that conversation. And then another thing I'll say as a person of color, and specifically a Black woman, is that looking at the civil rights movement, there are a lot of leaders that arose during that time period that have held their seats since then. And it's because they, really put that straight up bloodshed, right, into earning that seat and into making it something that, was a legacy and could be put forward to support the next generations. I'll say, though, for the Black community, I think it's important to look at how we connect the generations so that there is a trust so that we can turn over between the generations of giving over those reins of power. I think that there are a lot of young people, especially I'm going to talk particularly about the Black community, who have a lot of great ideas and things like that, but are not looking to unify people in the same way. And I think working in silos can ultimately be dangerous for putting forth a unified effort. So that's what I'll say in terms of people that have gained a seat and stayed there because they've built a legacy around it, which I think is really important.
So I hear a no, a yes, a maybe.
Yeah.
But the devil's in the details.
Can I ask you have a question? Yes, I'm something I'm curious about for everyone here too. Like I, as I mentioned, with term limits being one of my things, like I'm all for, yes, there are certain people who have been there for too long, they're ineffective, what have you. As I said, I just don't think right now is the time at the moment. But I don't think there's anything wrong with still pushing some of those folks to think differently, to answer tough questions. So do you guys have any thoughts on how we can do that without making it a primary challenge, right? Like I am trying to think of ways in which we can push some of those folks that maybe do need a little bit of a nudge to say, hey, you've been in the chair for a while. How about some new ideas?
I mean, you see
that more productively.
You see in California, the congressman, his former chief of staff is primarying him.
Oh, yeah.
He hadn't held a town hall in, 3-4 cycles. And then the second he gets a primary, he's out there doing town halls. And it's like, oh, wow, what a coincidence. So I'm struggling on this one. It's like, again, I want to be really clear. I don't have a vote on the DNC. Other folks in the Maryland Democratic Party do. So I'm speaking just as myself, not as the Maryland Democratic Party here. I think primaries are in safe blue seats can be productive if done appropriately. I will say, I think organizations like Run for Something really are finding their footing. I think when they first started, it was actually somewhat hazardous where I saw them primarying people who were incredibly effective.
Yeah.
And it didn't seem like there was logic to it. I am not yet convinced that the criteria for what ineffective means is thought through. And that's where my struggle is. If you are ineffective, you 100% should go. I have no qualms about that. Whether you're 25, 95, 185, you need to go if you're not effective. I'm not sure. I haven't seen David Hogg's rubric for what effective means. And I don't trust that there's a fair criteria or fair rubric, or it's not just, he came for Jim Clyburn. I would argue like that was not a smart thing to do. Jim Clyburn is still incredibly effective.
Yeah.
And then he backed off. That sort of pressure is still going to exist. Like, it's got to be a fair way to come for folks who are deemed ineffective. And I'm not sure there's a thought through process yet. But at the end of the day, like Jared said, our approval rating is not great. I think a lot of it is probably a reflective of people being frustrated with the lack of leadership and not necessarily the party, because we're still winning elections at like crazy rates and specials. So I don't really know, but I think this is a really complicated thing to talk through. But at the end of the day, it shouldn't be someone who sits in the DNC. He should be outside the DNC. He makes good points that former people have done that. They were elected officials with their leadership packs. I also think elected officials should not be part of the DNC, but I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying that out loud. But I just think if you have a job, do your job. Let other people have the other job. That's my thought process on it. Jared, you had some?
So I think getting stronger voices in the Democratic Party would be a big help in like rehabbing our image nationally. So I think that and again, like I don't know the rubric or like what it means to be, or exactly what David Hogg means it to be, as an ineffective or effective elected official. But like I do think that if we show that like, hey, we're serious about working for the American people and working families, I think that would go a long way. So I would like to. I'm all for primaries. And we'll let the American voters decide who they deem the best candidate to represent them.
That's fair. I'm going to go through some questions I think are a little bit faster, and then I do want to end with a game before you guys get out of here. So these aren't like single word answers. Rapid fire them a little bit more. Who in Dem politics are you a fan of right now? Like who you're like, that's my jam.
Yeah, I'll say, I think we're all going to say, less more. Everything we're doing here in Maryland is phenomenal. I think we have some great new members of Congress, Sarah Alfred, Johnny O, who are bringing some of that new perspective and some more progressive ideas. Looking outside of Maryland, I'm a big fan of Pete Buttigieg.
Okay.
And, I think back to, I was in fifth grade when Obama got elected, but I was still able to follow what Obama was saying, right? I was still able to, and did that make you feel old right there, Joe?
Yep.
Yeah. But like, I think what we could really use right now is somebody who can really effectively communicate with everyone. Everyone who was in fifth grade music class to who is 95, 185, whoever it is. We need someone who's a very effective communicator who can break down really difficult issues and their difficult solutions in a really effective manner. And every time I hear Pete speak, I feel like it's a really eloquent way of discussing really tough issues and tough solutions.
Who are you a fan of right now? It could be more than one person too if you feel like
big fan of AOC. I think no one's doing it like her at this point. Like, I mean, and again, somebody mentioned Mayor Pete. I do not like Mayor Pete. However, like the fact that he's going on these more conservative or right-wing podcasts and like he is speaking to the issues and basing them in democratic values, I think is incredible. And Democrats need to be doing that just across the board. But AOC and Bernie, their tour across the country doing town halls and these huge rallies, like it was nice to have something they could latch on to, like build the, like, you know, be able to put your energy into something. That was great. This is not like a political one, but like Stavros Halkis, the comedian from Baltimore City, like he's kind of like the left's Joe Rogan a little bit. So it's good to see Stavi have success and have him on our side.
I'm gonna say Angela also Brooks. I know, one, just getting behind her with our coordinated campaign and all the work, but I really do admire her journey, the things she's been able to accomplish, and having more Black women in the Senate is important. Yeah. I think that's, to me, really important. Not just to be in the room, but to add complex nuance to conversations. And I understand that coalition is growing. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like. And I appreciate her leadership and the way she was able to translate her experience in Maryland now to the forefront, and that more people know who she is and are really looking to hear her voice more.
Anyone from outside of Maryland?
The top of my head.
No pressure. We can circle back.
A stamp on, yeah.
I mean, Angela's a great pick too. Is your guys' friend group political?
I would say not necessarily political. I have friends that, really dial in, of course, like most people do around presidential elections, because there is that.
Like the group chats, are they talking politics or are they talking?
So having people that have, dialed in around that and recognizing that presidentials are important and talking about that in a group chat. But I have friends that are engineers. Some work in business, some work in fashion, different entities. And so I look at things through a political lens, through government, public admin kind of lens. And so their issues, hearing them from a business perspective, from an engineering perspective, from someone that works in a more creative industry, is always important for me to hear. So not necessarily in the political skew, but definitely looking at socioeconomics as a whole.
Jared, Samay, you guys, your friend group's political?
Yeah, I think similar to Autumn, like a lot of my friends are not in the political space. They're doing a bunch of other great things, probably saving a lot more brain cells than I am sometimes in politics. But what I see oftentimes is sort of the headline grabbing, which I think goes back to even Autumn's point about consuming media effectively and communicating effectively. But I see those oftentimes as a jumping off point to discuss issues more in depth. So, maybe it is a catchy Instagram story repost, but then someone sends in, we start talking more in depth about the issue, what it may be. And, I think obviously right now with everything happening in DC, there's constantly something to talk about. And it's what I try and do, at least for my part, for having some maybe more political perspective than they do, is start tying it back maybe to more direct things that are happening here in the state, or things that, maybe the headline is a little bit more grabby than it needs to be. Like, we don't need to head for the shelters just yet. Like, we can talk about some of these things and move past them and work through them.
Jared, your friend group political?
I have friends across, the spectrum of like political, knowledge, engagement. So, I have group chats that are, former campaign staff and friends from back home in Michigan that are just, former frat bros.
So I feel like you guys will probably not be the median young Dem, or I guess young voter on this. Where do you guys get your news?
WYPR.
I was going to say, I love NPR as well. Shout out to American University. We have WAMU. I also really do like the political spins. And then I also look at like Afro News and certain media that are facing minority groups, just because they sometimes highlight different stories. I know for a city council race that I worked on, I was introduced to the Latin Opinion in Baltimore City. Actually, it's across the state, but I was working with the entity in Baltimore City, and they were covering things that were really important to talk about that just were not considered mainstream. And just seeing how that strikes that chord of pride and then concern in different communities was really important to me.
You guys both, I was going to say NPR.
Yeah, definitely not the median voter.
But so I'll get away from that. I'll maybe say I tune in on occasion because I like comedic relief to Fox, just to see like what are they saying. Like I think it's just useful sometimes to know what the other side is spinning. But I'll say one area or one place I try and stay away from is really like social media. And what I mean by that are like the catchy like Instagram story reposts or like the Twitter hashtags. Like I think those oftentimes do more damage than good because they kind of present information without any nuance or detail that really doesn't help engage in conversation and provide meaningful context. So I try and stay away from those.
I think what is incredibly clear to me is you are not the average voters here. And like I said at the top, you are all highly plugged in Dems. So it's interesting to hear that that's where you get it. I think in the future, we're going to have a conversation with less plugged in Dems. I'm going to be really curious, or less plugged in voters, really curious to hear where they get their news. And my guess is they're going to say social media is my guess.
100%.
One thing also I'll say is I know a lot of people, I feel like in our age group and maybe even younger, are not watching the news as our like grandparents and parents.
Like turn it on in the morning.
Yeah, because I use streaming services.
Yeah.
They're like, it's rare that I'm dialing in just for regular straight up kick outside of football games or other things like that, Yeah. So I think that's another flag.
Yeah, that's a good point. What's your all's favorite podcast right now? Political or not political? Or both?
I'm going
besides Burn the Talk. You better not say Burn the Talk.
Mine got stolen, so it is NPR though. It is morning edition. It is morning edition every morning. My girlfriend makes fun of me because she knows to wake up once I turn morning edition as I'm getting ready and brushing my teeth. But I do like that. There's like with morning edition, you get political news. You also get world news. You get a little bit of culture. You get other stuff. Good stuff. Non-political. I'm a big like sports guy. Big Maryland sports guy. That means I'm also big into fantasy football. So not right now, but once fantasy football season rolls around, the fantasy football. What's
your take on sports betting? Is it?
It's insane. It's awful.
I personally enjoy putting like a $1 or $5 bet on a game just to like have another reason to like root. Like I said, I'm a big football guy, so I'm watching like almost, even if it's not a Ravens game, I'm watching.
You don't feel like it's just gotten so over the top where like everything is sponsored by DraftKings or by.
I could do it with fewer ads. That's for sure. Not every ad needs to be Evan Hart and LeBron James telling me to download draft.
I'm so like we're probably already past the Rubicon. We don't even know it, but the corruption around sports is going to be. There will be a congressional hearing sometime in our young lifetime about some massive corruption around sports betting, and I'm just going to leave it at that. That I think we've made as a nation, we've made a decision, and there are repercussions. I think we're starting to examine now. Jared, favorite podcast, political or not political?
Stabby's World.
Yep.
I do like the Punch Bowl's Daily Punch, kind of like a quick 10-minute, 15-minute podcast on the news for the day, at least on the Hill. I do like Political Deep Dive. I like the longer conversation on a specific topic. And I'm a gamer, so I'll listen to some gaming podcasts as well. So,
Autumn?
Yeah, I honestly, outside of like radio, I don't do a lot of podcasts.
Except Burn the Talking Point.
Yeah. But I just prefer music in my spare time. So.
Scrolling, are you all on TikTok?
I'm not.
No.
Oh, I am, fortunately.
All right. Yeah. Well, Instagram Reels then.
Instagram, yeah.
All right. What social media are you on, Autumn?
I think Twitter is a little more prevalent.
It's called X now.
What? Let me ask you then. What is Samay on TikTok, Jared on Instagram, Autumn on X? You've been scrolling. What's the last like political video that made you stop and be like, "Oh, that was creative. More people should do something like that." Or is there not one?
I mean, it's more so just it's both. It's funny, but it's also sad. I don't know the exact creator. I think a bunch of people do this, but like they'll go to like Trump rallies and ask questions. And
like Jordan Klepper.
Yeah, like Jordan Klepper's. Yeah, like that's what like it makes me stop because it's kind of funny, but then also makes me a little sad because I'm like, how did we get here?
Yeah.
But those always make me stop and get a little laugh in at least.
I think like the last one is I got into running the last like 6 months, and it was like a Instagram reel. This one guy, he's like running is political, and so it was like 30-second clip of him like giving off his like naming off his reasons why it's political, and so that was the last one I think.
Was that in response to Katie Max running?
I don't know what it was. If it was in response to anything, it's just like a lot of like the
running community on social media,
right-wing male influencers, like they get these dudes involved for like because they're like want to like work on their fitness and get jacked, and then this pushes them on a rabbit hole, and so this is kind of like hopefully a push to in the opposite direction.
Autumn?
Yeah, what I think is there's a lot of creators of color that do like relations to current events and then history that relates back to those specific communities. Like Today in Black History kind of things, or how does this issue as we're seeing it now actually relate to something that our ancestors dealt with in the past? That's something that grabs me. I don't know if that grabs everybody. I think something that is important though, and maybe it's more that like socioeconomic rather than political, is I think shows like skewed around like dating or talking points, like stuff like that, spark a lot of political type of conversations because people think, oh God, now, I'm never going to be able to find a partner, or like the whole going 50-50 conversation or different.
Wait, what's the
like
going 50-50 conversation?
Oh, that in a relationship, the man and the woman should both do 50-50 in contribution. It's
like
just,
financially?
yes. Or
where do you stand on that?
Housework, different things.
What are your thoughts on that, Autumn?
And that, well, I'll get to that, but that quickly rolls into a very political discussion.
It's very political.
Oh, well, wage inequality. Oh, well, I don't want to always do the dishes, that kind of thing. I think I'll say every relationship is different. Do what works for you. But the thing that comes across very poignantly is that the traditional man finds wife, blah, 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 at least in the heteronormative script, right, is something that people are like, whoa, like throwing the flag.
Jared, I saw you jumping in.
Oh, no, my girlfriend, Emily, if you're listening, I'm sorry. But she's not, like, the cleanest person. I'm not man. So I'm like, I cut that. I'm doing it. You're not doing that. I always do the dishes, the laundry, all the housework, which I have no issue with. But, like, she's also... Her commute is much longer than mine is.
Do you say anything good about her?
Oh, she's lovely. She works super hard. I'm super proud of her. I love her. Yeah.
All right. Sorry, Emily.
Have you guys seen the Jubilee?
Yeah.
I was gonna say
I'm so torn on those videos.
Those get me to tune in.
What does the red flag mean? I don't understand that. Like when they lift the red flag on the outside, is it like once you get to a certain amount of red flags, you have to end the conversation?
And I think I can relate that. But again, like I find those useful. Just going back to like how I say it, turn on Fox News very, very rarely, but just for a second, just sort of hear what they're saying. I think it gets me to stop and listen because it is useful just to kind of hear like what are people who you don't otherwise hear from or agree with, what are they thinking? Like what are they like? There was one my cousin who I live with, we're like brothers, and he's going to be starting a medical school. So there was one recently.
Congrats to Samay's cousin.
There was one recently with a doctor talking about
I saw that one,
like vaccination, just like general medical practice. And I think just like hearing how other people perceive like experts in fields in medicine or elsewhere, it's illuminating, and I think it just guides and makes me think of how to approach some of those situations when those aren't people we're always, I imagine us here, speaking, we don't engage with those people very often.
I mean, I think what I'm hearing all this too is just like a political entry point into non-political spaces is we haven't quite figured that out on our side yet. I think we're starting to see that. But just from a young person's perspective, it is like entertainment still matters and not everything has to be political, but it's helpful when there's like entry points into the political space of it. So I want to end with a game here. I appreciate everyone being here. So in order for me, not a young Dem, to relate to the kids, as they say.
Isn't the cutoff 36? Are you 36?
I'm about to age out, man. Not quite there, but I'm about to age out.
You be a young Dem for today.
Yeah, for today I am. How you do, fellow kids? We're going to play a game called Cringe or Cool, which, as a young person, I named because it sounds very cool. I'm going to give you scenarios. You tell me, is it cringe or is it cool from your seat? And then give me a little bit why. But we're going to rapid fire through. Quick answers. Cringe or cool? Pete Buttigieg's beard.
Cool.
I like beards.
He looks good with it.
I'm biased, but I like beards.
All right. RFK swimming in Rock Creek Park.
Cringe.
You mean getting diseases is not cool these days?
Shout out brainworms.
Calling your group chat the Resistance.
Oh, cringe.
It's pretty cringe. It's not Star Wars.
Do you have group chats?
Yeah.
What's your best named group chat?
Oh, that's tough.
I have to give a special shout out because we were just in Puerto Rico. We got a custom bottle from Bacardi and we engraved it with this group name. It's Da Boys. Classic.
Da Boys.
D-A. D-A. So it gets the point across.
Boys with a Z or an S?
Actually, B-O-I-I-S.
Oh,
very nice. Yeah.
How many people are in the group chat?
4 or 5.
Right. Jared, Autumn, best group chat name.
Girlfriends. I think it kind of plays on the show, like, things like that. But
Shout out the Turbo team, those who know.
Turbo.
And then I have, that's the only, very few of my group chats are named. Very, very few.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Is that not the thing anymore to name group chats? I mean, even Pete Hegseth names his group chats. PC Small Houthi Group, right? Oh,
Wait, is anyone on Signal here?
Next one is buying campaign merch off Etsy instead of off campaign websites. Cool or cringe?
Cringe.
I mean, do they have to follow like FEC?
No.
Exactly. Pretty cringe.
I would say
Don't do it.
cringe.
I mean, hey, it's cool. But I want one of the Maryland Democratic Party's crab shirts.
Here's a shout out. Web store just launched. Go to store.mddems.org. Brand new shirts, including a retro Howling Crabs shirt underneath the Bay Bridge and a full moon. It's pretty sweet. Wearing Crocs to door knock.
Oh, dude,
Like how big is the pack? Because I can't imagine they'd be that comfortable.
100 doors. 100 doors you wearing.
There's no shot.
They're not comfortable. I don't know why you would.
I thought they're supposed to be the most comfortable shoe.
No.
I've knocked doors in.
Who owns Crocs?
I own Crocs.
I don't.
But I don't.
Crocs.
I certainly wouldn't.
Jared, do you own Crocs? No. Have you ever owned Crocs?
No.
So Samaze the only Croc owner here?
I'm a Croc owner. When
did you buy them? Is a question.
It was years ago. I mean, it was when I was going on a trip to with the beach, and I prefer them more flip flops. I mean, when I knocked on doors, I bought a cheap pair of dress shoes that had the tennis.
You're
tougher than I am.
Yeah, I felt like I was 23 when I was running at the time, 21. I had to present some air of I'm not a kid, so Crocs would have
honestly
killed that.
If Crocs are super comfortable and they're in right now, cool.
I'm hearing why.
But I'm concerned about blisters.
I'm hearing you can trip on the little strap.
That's put it in mode. You definitely have to put them in sports mode if you're door knocking at them.
No, wear socks with it just in case. I don't know. Maybe that's a little logistics.
Next one. Clapping when a plane lands.
Cringe.
Cool.
So cringe.
Ooh.
I'm happy.
You know what? I take it back. In today's day and age, where we're just not sure every day if every plane is going to land safely.
That was a weird.
I was gonna say maybe I want to
the
go
plane crash every single
yeah, maybe 5 years.
I recant everything. Today, because of recent circumstances, I'll give it to you.
So 5 years ago, clapping cringe. Today,
cool.
Cool because
survived.
Sean Duffy turns out he's not a great Secretary of Transportation. But Autumn, you've always thought it's cool.
Didn't
Do you actually clap?
Getting praise at your job? Imagine being a pilot is getting a roarous applause when you land.
I would love getting people clap for me every day. I'd be so happy.
And some pilots will share a little funny anecdote when they land. Oh hey, last time I was here, blah blah blah. Happened. They'll come over the speaker.
I thought you were gonna be last time I was here, I almost didn't land. They got it.
They tell jokes, different things. They'll tell a joke about the weather.
You and I have very different pilots. My pilots are not that funny. Here's one that's personal, near to dear to my heart, and it's subtweeting a very specific person that's in my texts all the time. Complaining that Dems didn't do something without knowing that it was Republicans who blocked it.
That's reading.
Could you read it one more time? I gotta follow that one.
Complaining to someone that Democrats didn't do something, but they didn't know we didn't do it because Republicans blocked it.
Oh.
And I'm talking about a very specific person.
Because you're letting this clip. I'll say cool.
I think it's a little cringe. I mean,
I agree.
What?
Because then I have to spend the whole time arguing back of we didn't do it because Republicans blocked it, and then I look like I'm defending status quo.
Yeah, it's cringe only because I have to then remember that we just don't have the ability to do anything right now.
Yeah. This game.
Cool. Because you're my friend Joe, this is a very cool game. This is a great idea.
Yeah, very cool. 3 thumbs up. Awesome. So I'm going to give each of you 30 seconds. Any final words you want to share with the audience, but let's keep it to a tight 30. I've done this before, and people do not follow my directions. So 30 seconds, anything you want people to be lookout for that you're working on, just any advice you want to give to Democrats or anything that's top of mind. Anyone want to go first?
Yeah, I can start. I think being involved is really important. There are a lot of people right now hearing a lot of different things, feeling like, oh goodness, the world is going in a terrible direction. What can I do? Get involved. Once you start volunteering, they will not stop calling you. You will rise to a leadership position pretty quickly if you're reliable and you show up. I think also young people get involved in things like Central Committee Young Democrats. It'll expand your network and help you to build bonds in the work you do. And then I am Autumn C. Grant on LinkedIn. So, yeah.
Sure.
Autumn mentioned Young Dems. There's a executive board election this Saturday.
Go to the Young Dems social media to find out details.
This Saturday. Is it a breakfast? I can't remember, but I will be there. Jared Matthews. I can't say what I'm working on because it is, it's in the Baltimore region. That's all I'm going to say. But Jared with an I.
This summer, people should keep an eye out for
maybe early fall. Early fall. But Jared Matthews, Jarid Matthews on LinkedIn.com if you want to give me a follow.
Is this something I've told people, young people, since I've been able to talk to them about this kind of stuff? Focus on what's happening locally and in the state, especially in times like this where all the news cycles about what's happening in D.C. We can do so much good at the state and local level. My job that I'm doing right now is focused on how we can combat climate change at the state and local level. We can do things, we can accomplish things, even if D.C. is in disarray. So it's easy to get caught up in the headlines and feel like there's no good that can happen, that we're just stuck in this cycle in this time period right now. But really look at listen to this podcast. You probably are tuned into what's happening in Maryland. But you can really make an impact. We can make some great changes here at the state and local level. I think that's something to be excited about and to keep working on, especially when we know that we can't do much right now in DC. And on LinkedIn, I'm Samay Kindra. So
awesome. Well, Samay, Jared, Autumn, thank you for being here. This was a really interesting conversation, and I'm really looking forward to some of the future conversations that we're going to have here on Burn the Talking Points with other members of our coalition and kind of hear how things line up and maybe where some young Dems are a little bit different than others, or maybe where there's a lot more overlap than we thought. Thank you for tuning in, Samay, Jared, Autumn. Thank you for joining us. This was a really interesting conversation, and I'm looking forward to kind of hearing from some of the other members of our coalition and see where maybe things overlap more than we think, or maybe where we have some differences of opinion that we can work through together. I'm Joe Francavilla, your Deputy Executive Director. Please make sure that you follow us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify Podcasts, on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. We really appreciate it. And the best thing you can do is share this with a friend, and that will help grow our audience. And also make sure you follow us on all of our social media, mddems on X, on Blue Sky, on Instagram, Maryland Democratic Party on Facebook. And also a couple of programming notes. One, we have our gala coming up in early June, June 12th. If you go to our social media, you can see the details. Our guest speaker is going to be Raphael Warnock, Senator from Georgia, which is really, really cool. An unbelievable speaker and has a great message to share. So hopefully you can join us there. Thanks again. Keep tuning in, and we'll see you next time.